intelligence specialist. I'm super excited today because my guest is the co-founder of Podcast Connection and doing podcasts and wanting to do actually real podcasts as of going on Spotify and all the other podcast space. At some point, I'd like to know more about that. So I'll ask you lots of great questions today to go a bit deeper on what does it take to do a good podcast and how to have someone perhaps helping you and moving you in the direction that you have amazing podcasts. So before I go there, I want to explain why I call this show It's All Good. As if you watched my show before, you know, it's because of my favorite cup that says It's All Good. And it's a way of living. I've been living my life with thinking that it's all good because regardless of what happened, if it's the past, you can't change it. If it's a 5 second ago, you can't change what just happened. It's now the past. And the future, you can't really predict it. So my philosophy of life now is, hey, it's all good. It's whatever it is today. It is what it is. And it's good because I'm alive. I'm here. I have so much to be grateful for. And that's a short version of why I call this show It's All Good. But also, I would like to invite you, if you like this show, go on my YouTube channel and subscribe and click the little bell so that you're being notified whenever I have new shows coming up. Most likely, it's always Monday at noon Pacific. And I think it goes on my YouTube around 12 or 1 o'clock. But the show is always live at noon on Monday. And also, if you would like to talk with me or be on my show, you can contact me here at tiny.cc/talk with Denise. And I'll be more than happy to have a chat with you, look at my calendar and book a time that's available, and then we can have a chat. So as I was saying, my amazing guest is Noémi. It's like Doremi, Noémi Beres, and she's the co-founder of Podcast Connection. And I'm super excited to have you with me, Noémi, ABC. No, it's all right. It's all good.
It's
So
all good.
welcome to the show. I'm super happy to have you with me today. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Denise, for having me today. It's an honor.
Wonderful. So tell me a little bit about you. And I know you're not in America, so
No.
where you are and what you do and how you end up doing, helping people with their podcast.
Well, I was born and raised in Hungary in Central Europe, but ended up in Cyprus, Europe, and the other part of Europe, and the very eastern part of Europe. And I live here, and I've been living here for 12 years now and counting. It's a
Nice.
beautiful place by the Mediterranean Sea, so it's nice to live
It's
here.
worth place to live, yes.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And what I do, I'm the co-founder of Podcast Connections, podcast booking agency. We help entrepreneurs to connect to quality podcast shows and enrich their lives through podcast interviews. So basically, it's a PR agency, but we focus on podcasts and podcast interviews.
Oh, nice, nice. So, but what got you to start doing that? I mean, you like, how do people start doing that? Like, what motivated you to start that job?
It was accidental. This is 100% accidental. Before Podcast Connections, from 2007 until 2020, we had an online travel related business. It was online car rental.
Okay.
And it was the first online car broker website basically in Hungary. And we served Hungarian clients who traveled abroad. And I was a travel writer,
What
blog
am I
writer,
for?
yeah, blog writer, and I did social and content marketing. So yeah, it was fun to do it. But unfortunately, with COVID, the pandemic started
Okay.
in 2020, early 2020, everything stopped.
Yeah.
So the travel industry collapsed. So as car hire, car rental. So we had to pivot, and we had to try to figure out what to do with our business. And luckily, we had a mentor from Ireland who basically helped us to launch our podcast booking agency. And since then, I just love and enjoy what I'm doing and connecting people worldwide why I'm still here. In Cyprus, I connect people in Canada, I connect people in the US, in the UK, and
Yeah, yeah.
everywhere in the world. So
Well, that's
it's fun.
awesome. That's super cool. So, so tell me a little bit, what does Podcast Connection? So what is the service that you offer?
Yeah, it's a done for you service, which means that when someone comes to us and they want to be a guest in a podcast, we have them first of all research, what they. First of all, we have to know a lot of information about them to represent them on Quality Podcast. So we have to dig deep into their life, their business, their topics, and then we do our own research to find the right podcast for them. We have different tools to use to find the right shows, like Listen Notes, iTunes, obviously, and different places. Then when we have the right show for them, we can also help them to develop their topics, talking points. If they need a one sheet, we help them to create one. So that's included in our
Yeah,
package, quote
yeah,
unquote.
all done for you.
And once we have all the information, we just send it to our client, and they get everything about the podcast, the host, the show, times, dates, and they just have to pick a date and time, and they just have to prepare for the interview and be ready for that.
So that's
It's in a
wonderful. So what you do, you actually take people like me, for example, that want to speak, and
Yeah.
you show me different places where I could speak. You find me places to speak.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
Find you different podcasts worldwide. I would say 90% of the time it would be in the US or Canada,
Yeah,
UK,
yeah.
where you can be on a podcast show. But yeah, that's what we do in a nutshell. Yeah.
Oh, nice, nice. So I know that some people, they go to interview, but they don't know what they need to do prior to do that. So what let's say me, for example, what do I have to make sure that I know that I'm ready for when I show up for an interview? And what is, like, do I have to bring a topic? Do I have to bring, like, does the host have a topic? So how does that work?
Usually you have to bring the topic. So you
Mhm.
have to get ready. And what we advise to our clients, get ready and have like 3 topics and a couple of talking points each. So when the host can pick from it. Obviously, you won't cover all the topics during half an hour interview because you won't have time for that. But have some topics ready. So it's just easier for the host to choose from those topics and talking points, and just easier for everyone. There are some hosts, they have like pre-written questions sent to you, and you have to prepare before the interview. It depends. It really depends on the host and on the
Yeah,
show.
yeah. So I've had some guests here. I won't name names, but
Mhm.
if somebody go through all my archive, they might find that interview where I was asking question and the answer was like, like 4 words answer or 2 words answer. It's like it makes it very difficult. So what is the best way to have an interesting conversation in a podcast when you're being interviewed? So what would you recommend your clients to prepare for, and to, because I gotta say, after 20 minutes I was like, are we done? Like I was like, oh my goodness, gotta get out of this situation. But so what is the best way to really make sure that you're an interesting guest and that people are interested to listening to you? Because the idea is, like, for me, I have you as a guest, but it's for my listeners, right? I want my listeners to
Right.
be interested and intrigued about the things that you have to bring. So how can you prepare yourself as a guest to have that great conversation with the host?
Obviously, when you do many interviews, you will get better at it. I mean, when you start that podcast guesting, no one's perfect. So you just have to, proof is in the pudding. So you just have to try it and do it, rinse and repeat. But obviously, try to be engaging.
Hmm.
Try to treat it as a human conversation that you have just another person, and not to focus on how many people will listen to it and download maybe this interview. Try to engage with the host, try to be conversational, don't be so stiff, or and don't use just like a few words. Try to express yourself at least in a couple of sentences. That's why we come back to the first question. You have to prepare yourself. And
Yeah.
what I tell my clients, sometimes if they need it, we can do like a test interview with them.
Yeah.
Talk about the topic so they can get acquainted with the topic, and they will have some experience how to be a great podcast guest. And but you have to prepare, and I think that's the key. Even if before the interview, try to go through your topics, talking points, or even just say that loud, and as if you were already having an interview. So just practice. I think practice, 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 and that will help for sure.
Mm-hmm. So I guess the more you're being interviewed, the easier it will get, right?
Absolutely, 100%.
And and also, like you mentioned earlier, like we talked before this call, and you mentioned about being kind and polite when you as a guest. So what did
Yeah.
you mean by that? Because all my guests are usually pretty good, so I didn't have anybody rude or saying bad things. But so what would you tell people about that?
Yeah, I mean, treat the host with respect and the show with respect, because I meant by that it's not just being nice and being like smiley or whatever, but treat the host and the show with respect in order to don't treat it as an advertisement, because it is not. So if you have a book and if you wrote a book, that's very cool, but don't just talk about your book. Try to share knowledge with the audience and with the host, because that's more important than, okay, so if you want to know something about me, buy my book, buy my course. So it's not about that. You
Yeah.
have to you have to add value to that show and
Hmm.
bring value to the audience. So yeah, you can be happy, you can be nice, but be respectful with the host and the audience, and
Yeah, yeah, I can
bring value.
understand that,
Yeah.
And then I can see also that once the show, because a lot of time it is recorded and then the show is being broadcast later. So what are the steps that the guest should take? Like it's not in theory, it's not just you show up and then thank you and then you never talk about the show again. What should the guest use the show for moving forward after the recording is done?
Once the recording is live and out there, obviously the host will tell you that it's up and running, it's live, so you can start to share it on social media. And you can enjoy different social media channels. I use LinkedIn a lot, and I use the podcast. I repurpose the podcast and the interviews content all the time, and by that it helps me not to create evergreen content for my, for even for my web page, for my blog. I don't have one, but maybe. And but for social media for sure, because you can use this content again and again, maybe in a month time, in 2 months time, forever. I mean, if you get a permission from the host that, for example, you can use video clips, audiograms, repurposed audiograms or video clips from the interview, that's just amazing, because evergreen content. So you don't have to create extra content for you. It's already there. You just have to share it. That's what I try to tell and teach my clients, to just use it, in so many different ways, because maybe I post like about one interview today, but you won't remember it like in 2 days time. So you can repeat it maybe next week, 2 weeks time. So then after a while, it looks like that you are on podcast interviews all the time. Maybe you only did two in that month, but you can just, switch it up, and you can just share it all the time. And that's just so important. It's a win-win situation for everyone,
Mhm.
for the host, for me, and plus it's again being respectful. And you created a platform where I can share my knowledge, where I can help people, and and then I help you with spreading that content and sharing that content in the world. I think it's really important.
And also going back to respect is when you share it, then you share where it comes from, right? Like
Exactly.
you
Right.
tag
Right.
the
Yes.
podcast host and you say, I had the great interview and then just a clip, or if you want to do like a audiogram, right, which is just a little
Yeah.
soundtrack with some words, then you just say, from podcast so and so, even just naming the host, it's already, the minimum someone can do, right?
And with AI, with ChatGPT now, there are limitless options. I mean, I did like one of my secrets. It's not so secret if I tell it anymore. But for example, from YouTube, you can download the transcripts of any interviews you have there. And then you can use that text and convert the text into an article, into a blog post, into a newsletter with help of ChatGPT, for example, because
Yeah,
that's a
yeah,
great
yeah.
tool to do that. So yeah, and it's again, it's it will save you time. it will create like quality content. Obviously, you will check the content before you post it because there can be some
Yeah,
mistakes.
absolutely. It's amazing. So
But it's yeah.
So that goes to rule number one, which is be prepared, because whatever you bring into the conversation, think about the fact that this material can be reused several times at different places. So by being prepared, bringing great question to the interviewer, to the host, so that you know the answer that you want
Yeah.
to give, and you can repurpose those answers endlessly, right? Because when you do
Right.
little clip, it could be like 1 minute clip, even though your answer is like 5 minutes or 3 minutes,
Yeah.
like you can even 30 second, right? Like you say a good tip, you're like, okay, now I'm going to put the gold into that answer, and then I can
Absolutely.
repurpose that.
Yeah, yeah. Or you can make quotes or quote cards out of the
Yeah.
interview, and you can share it with your picture. And then what I always do, I share the link, like your YouTube link or your iTunes link in the comments, so people can click on it, so you don't have to search for it in the
Mhm.
actual post, because sometimes it just makes it. You don't want to make that life harder, so just make
Yeah,
something
yeah,
easier, so you can get them listen or watch you on YouTube or listen on iTunes. So yeah, those are also great things. Plus, when you have an interview, don't forget to follow up with the host. And at least just say thank you after the interview, and
mhm,
try to keep in touch with the host, because I always tell people that like having an interview is always just the start of a relationship, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's like, okay, interview done and dusted, I forget about the host, forget about everyone, next one. No, I mean, you can network with the host, and I mean, the host audience could potentially be your client or anyone from that
mhm.
group. So, and people will listen to it maybe in 2 weeks' time, in a month time. So, stay in touch, and it's
Yeah.
important.
And I'll go back to even before doing the interview. Why would an entrepreneur wants to be on podcast? So what's the great purpose of wanting to be, or having or wanting or needing to be on podcast? So what's the purpose of that?
Yeah, the purpose, I mean, there are a lot of advantages to be a guest on the show. First of all, the most important is that you're building your brand. You're building your personal brand by being on shows, and you're becoming an authority in that particular
Mhm.
niche or in that field. Because once you do interviews, your name will pop up everywhere in Google. So anyone will search you or your company. There's a social proof that is like, okay, this person is, is in interviews all the time. So
Yeah,
they may know something about their stuff. So let's chat with them. And I think that's really important, like personal branding, or building
yeah,
authority, creating content, obviously, for yourself and for your brand. Then it's very good for the SEO as well, because the host will post all your social media links, your website, in the show notes, and those will link back to your website, so people will always find you, and that's also very important. I think these are the three main advantages. There
yeah,
are loads of them,
yeah,
obviously,
yeah, of course.
but I think these are the three main most important.
Good, good. And so that must be why I never have any problem finding guests to be on my show.
Yeah,
people are like
absolutely.
people are like, oh yeah, yeah, I want to be on your show. I found that it's a lot harder personally to find shows to be on than to find guests to be on my show, you know.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. And the other thing is that because of COVID and because everything happened in the world, so many people started podcasts, and there are so many podcasts out there. But I thought that when COVID stops, people will go back to in-person media, like in-person and live events only. But no, I mean it's still going strong, very strong,
Yeah,
the podcasting world, and the shows are so busy, and they are booked up until some of them until February, March next year. Even the bigger names and the bigger podcasts. So yeah, that's why maybe this going back
yeah,
what you
yeah,
just said. It's like yeah, sometimes it's hard to be a guest in a podcast because you have to wait. There are waiting lists. So yeah, it's
yeah.
very
It's
popular
just
right
like I
now.
was saying, right? I never have problem finding guests. There's always people, oh yeah, yeah, I'll be a guest. Wow, finally I find someone that wants to have me on their show, right? But
Yeah, right.
trying to be on shows. So how how do you use, so you must have a secret sauce that you don't have to reveal the whole secret, but you must have like a palette of podcasts that you're friends with, that they know you will bring them good guests or things like that. You must have like a library of different podcasts that you contact all the time to feed them guests. Is that how that works?
Yes, it does. It does. We work around, we have been around 300-ish podcasts worldwide, mainly from US, Canada, and UK, some of them from Australia, New Zealand, not many. And what the fields we usually work with e-commerce, and we started with e-commerce clients, female entrepreneurs only. Then, we just expanded. There are a lot of niches we cover, and a lot of podcasts that we are in, we have good relationship with, because that's really important for even just running an agency. It's, as I said before, like networking as a guest, but networking as an agent is also really, really important. So that usually takes up my time. And but I love networking, and I love connecting with people, and just like I love communicating. So yeah, it's fun. It's a fun part for me.
So what should people budget for if they want to hire you? Like, because like, do you have a different fee schedule? So if they pay so much, they get so many podcasts. So how does that work working with you?
I mean, our system is in the change right now, so I can't really tell you an exact price.
Okay.
It will change, and we will offer more services to our clients in the very near future, which I'm very excited about, and probably a masterclass too. So that's only I can tell about it. The rest of it is secret. But what
we'll
we
have to have you back.
Yes, I will reveal the whole thing. And we had just a standard fee that we use, and right now, but it will change soon. So yeah.
So I know you mentioned it at the beginning, but now that we all listen to you, we understand more what you do. So when people sign up with you, you said that if they need, they'll have a one page. So a one page, for those that don't know, is a page that shows, right, your pictures, a few pictures, your topics, a few key question, things about your bio, what you've done, right? Is there anything else you put in there? Your social media? What else do you put in a
social
web page?
media. Yeah, maybe previous podcast interviews,
Yeah,
just link to
your best
those. I like
interview
to
so
know
people
more.
can
Yeah,
look into. Yeah.
exactly, and a nice headshot. Yeah, that helps as well.
Hmm.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you already mentioned the rest, and a short bio that will fit on the one sheet and the one page. It's great, because
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
will know more about you in
And
advance.
then you say you would also help them if they need to do a mock-up interview so that they feel more relaxed and not so stressed
Yeah,
out if they're just starting.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
and then that's great. I mean, it's amazing to be able to have that kind of service when you don't have the reach, right? To find
Right.
podcast place. And also by hiring an agency like you get access to podcasts that you would never had access before, right? Because you
Yeah,
build that
right.
relationship with those podcast hosts, and they trust you to bring a certain type of people with them, with their niche and whatever they're looking for. So I think that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, trust is really important. I have a couple of podcasters, and they just gave me their total access to their calendar. So, and they told me you can book anyone. Just tell me when you book it. So it's like, oh, thank you, that's an honor.
Yeah,
Because
that's pretty
you
cool.
can just send, because they know that obviously you're going to send people that
Yeah,
they will
yeah.
like and
Oh,
trust.
that's great. That's great. That's a good problem to be resolved. Like, even for
Yeah.
me, like I'm doing everything myself, right? So it's whenever, like, I'm gonna give, the behind the scene to my listener right now. Whenever I look for a guest, I first have a pre-interview with them. And then after that, I send them a form to fill up. So they fill up the form. And then out of the form, I create a page that I'm gonna post under the video on YouTube to tell who they are, what they do, etc., their bio. And then I make a post to announce the podcast, so all of that, I do that on my own. But having to also vet, the people, make sure that they're proper guests for me, and reminder for the podcast, where it is, make sure you book before our time. Our time is this, so we need to book for that, for make sure you show up when we're doing the show and all of that. So it's a big system to roll, and having someone to support you and help you into doing that. I think that's pretty cool.
And it's a lot of work because I have total respect for those because they work a lot. And I know that some people hire other people to edit the shows or do stuff, but most of the hosts I know they work by themselves and they
Yeah.
do everything. And it's a lot of work and
Yeah,
it's
and that's
very
why I go
time.
live, because there's no editing involved. So whenever
Yeah,
I do
that's it.
well, that's just the way it is. It comes out the way it is.
It's going to stay there for eternity. That's it.
Absolutely. So I have a way that people can reach you. So if they want to know more, so you have a website,
Yeah,
and it's podcastconnections.co. So that's pretty simple to remember, right?
yeah, it is.
Podcasts connections
Yes,
dot
in plural.
co.
Yeah, in
Perfect.
plural. Yeah.
And I like that you put CO, because that's generic. It's not EU, that's not US, that's not Canada, that's not
Yeah,
Australia. They have AU at the end of their
yeah,
thing, but CO is perfect. It's generic for the whole world. So anybody can
yeah.
reach out and have a chat with you. And so, do you have one more tip that you'd like to give people that like to be on a podcast? One more last thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Whatever you do, and it's not only in the podcasting world, the podcast guesting world, just be consistent and persistent because that's the key in podcast guesting as well, and how you live life and how you do business. Just being consistent and persistent, I think that helps a lot and stay in the business, even if there are pivots and huge changes in your life. If you do what you like and just do it continuously, persistently, you will definitely reach your goals.
Wow. So don't give up. I have a lady, she always sign her email with NGU, never give up, so just be persistent and practice, practice, practice. So even though you're aiming to have the large, 100,000 listener podcast, that's okay. Start with people that have less listener and practice and practice. And the more comfortable you get, you will attract those high, listener podcasts. So keep practicing.
Yes, absolutely. And
All
just keep
right.
going. That's my other motto. So,
Well, thank
yeah.
you so much, Noemi, and stay there. I'll be right back with you. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you get great value out of that and understanding a little bit more what's in the world of being on a podcast and also being a guest and being a host. So I hope you enjoyed that. I have a gift for you. So I work also on my own for my business with empty nesters and people that have lots of changes in their life and how to handle changes. So I have a checklist, which is starting over checklist. So you can not click because you can't click on that, but you can go to bit.ly // starting over checklist and download my free gift. And I'll give you little tips and hint on how to help whenever. And it doesn't also, it's, I work with empty nesters, but let's say you're married and you lose your spouse, and how to live that life, like let's say your kids have left the house, or you had a pet, you're single and your pet is gone now. So how do you handle all these changes in your life that are huge and that leave some emptiness in your heart? So you can download this checklist. And also, again, I mentioned earlier to sign up for my YouTube channel. I'd love to have you sign up and listen to all my videos. So it's youtube.com / at Denise Belil. And you can book a call with me at tiny.cc, Talk with Denise. So until next time, I wish you an amazing week. I'll be there next Monday with another guest. So until then, be kind to one another.